Zé, já tens o link da stream, não?
Sim, vou mandar agora, está bem?
Ok.
Just hold on. Been to places that I'll never go. Seen some faces that I'll never know. I keep dancing, but it's just for show. Whoa. Look up at the sky full of stars. Close my eyes, I always see the dark. Tell myself I wanna seize the night. Alright, and we walk this road together, and I still feel like I'm alone. Just hold on, just hold on, just hold on, just hold on.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another BetaCast. I'm your host, José Rocha. You already know me from last week. If you don't know me, hi, nice to meet you all. Don't forget to subscribe. This is the most important thing that you should do right now if you are listening this for the first time, or if you come out from LinkedIn, WhatsApp group, whatever. Just subscribe, leave a like, and remember, you can make questions. So, let's begin. And I'm one of the critics from last week. Some said that I speak too fast, so I'll try to go slower this time, okay? I promise you all. So, first let me introduce your guests. But this time I'm going to do it differently. Let them introduce themselves. I already told. Miguel, you want to go first?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Sabino. Thank you, Jose, for having me and for congratulations on the podcast.
Thank you.
So I am the founder and the CEO of Thumb Media. Thumb Media is a media company specializing on digital media. We do rights management on YouTube and other digital platforms, but mostly on YouTube is our main focus, as we are also, to my knowledge, the only Portuguese company that is an official YouTube partner for Portugal. We aggregate on our network on YouTube around 600 channels who carry a monthly traffic of around 160 to 170 million monthly views. And what we do with that, we basically understand or help the channels understand their analytics, what are the trends and how they can use that information to improve their content, to grow their channels, to develop their audience, to shift their channel programming strategy or content strategy, and really help them be the best they can be on the platform. We also work with rights management companies. We do rights management on YouTube, collecting rights for music or for broadcasters. We work with a couple of the media companies, and basically owned by someone that we represent on YouTube is not misused, and we can both monitor and track what is being done with that content and also monetize on it. So in a nutshell, this is what we do at the media. I started the company around 5 years ago, and we're doing well so far. So
thank you so much for this introduction. And now Luís Roquette Geraldes. Go.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me, Jose. My name is Luís Roquette Geraldes. I am a lawyer for about 12 years now. I've been working for Morais, Leitão, which is one of the biggest firms in Portugal. I've worked for a year in London at Skadden Arps, which is a US firm. And basically, I'm the head of the emerging companies practice at my firm, a team with a very pompous name called Team Genesis, which is a team directed at emerging companies. And I've been working with startups, like I would say 100% of my time for the past 5 to 6 years. So very much into the ecosystem and trying to understand the pain points of what is going on right now. That's basically it. Not much more from a lawyer. That's what you would expect from a lawyer, right?
Thank you so much. So let's start the podcast how we started last week. I want to ask you what steps you make in your company to adapt, because it's this question is universal. To ask this till this pandemic ends. I want to hear from you the first steps that you made when you heard from this, when you went home, you started going remote. From Miguel and then from Luís. Miguel.
Okay, so remote working is kind of in the DNA of the company already. When I started,
Miguel, your
my living room couch. I'm breaking. Oh, sorry, it's the connection. I was trying to make it better, but probably didn't work. So I was saying that remote working is on the DNA, because when I started the company, I had no office. I was working out of my couch in my living room, and I did that for about a year before actually moving into an office. And so from the start, we started developing our resources and our materials and our all the resources that we need to make the company work in the cloud. So the shift for us was not very complicated. Well, the company has grown, and in the meantime, and we are associated with another company, so there are shared servers who are at the office and then backed up to the cloud. So we very quickly. We did that in one afternoon. Our IT team was very quick on that. So we implemented VPNs for everybody, and they basically they took their laptops and they went home. Of course, when you do that, then you have a period of adaptation, because it's one thing to work every day at the office with everyone, and it's a completely different thing to work out of home. But I would say that technically it was not a problem. It was more kind of the work discipline that I think that we needed to adjust more.
So if I can go after that. So basically, I remember in 2017, 2018, when I went to the UK to work for a year, I had to manage the team remotely for about a year. And I remember I was a huge adept at using Slack and Trello and Zoom at the time. So that was kind of an apprenticeship for us to use remote work more generally. To be fair, I think this entire pandemic issue just jumpstart the adoption of remote work, obviously, for everyone. And I'm not going to say it was an easy task for everyone at a 250 lawyer strong company. Like that is not something I'm going to say, because it's not true, and everyone knows it's not true. But for the adopters, the ones that are tech savvy, I would say the ones below 40, the adoption was really quite easy, and we're completely we were already doing a lot of stuff in terms of the way we were delivering work via Microsoft Teams and having everyone working remotely with the tools that we had, the Microsoft tool and the suite that we had. And to be fair, like 9 months ago, I remember I had a discussion with the team saying that while I was in the UK, I didn't have one meeting in 10 months of work. I didn't have one in-person meeting in London. I remember that. We all had calls and we all had video calls. So basically, at some point, like 9 months ago or 6 months ago, I can't remember the timing, I went back to my team and said, I think we should include on our fee quotes that we're going to give preference to video calls as opposed to in-person meetings, because they're way more efficient in delivering the work. Because if you go to a lawyer's office, the meeting will typically not last less than an hour, whereas a call will clearly, everyone will feel okay in having less than an hour. So basically, at Team Genesis, it was fairly easy because we're obviously very connected with the technological world, if you will. Yeah. So that was easy. I'm not going to say for the partners that are 50 over that remote is going to be very easy to overcome. It's not. It has some challenges. In relation to the point that Miguel made about discipline, to be fair, we're working so much, there is no way we can't be disciplined, because the at the pace that we're having, the legislation avalanche that we're feeling right now leaves us at a point that we need to be disciplined, whether we are or not. There's not an alternative. So I think we're all working a bit too hard in order to try to make everyone understand what's going on, what's being enacted, because it's on a daily basis and everyone is struggling a lot. So I think we didn't have a time to breathe yet. And because we don't commute, I feel I'm way more tired now than I was working at the office, and that I'm way more efficient right now.
So now this question is for you, Luís. I just read today the report from Morais Leitão, and it's a really nice report. Congratulations. More than 300 pages, and you categorize into themes. And that's really important. That facilitates the readers. But I want to ask you, like, the important lessons that you have learned doing that report. So the things that are changing, what do you want to emphasize there?
So I think I wasn't involved in every section of the report, naturally, but because obviously we have expertise and there's a lot of very large team deploying the report, and it's gonna be updated constantly because of the legislation that's being enacted. But I would say the two top worries that I'm seeing, or the two top priorities for me, are clearly the labor issues about revolving around layoff. Everyone is very concerned about that, and I think that the understanding the ropes of it is not clear, and I think the government has done very well in that, in the sense that we've hit and miss a few times, but they were very quick to get back and solve the issues that we had on the layoff, and try to actually make it applicable to every entity that we can think of, so that it does provide or push us to get to a more stable environment, if you will. The second point is obviously state aid, in the sense that obviously it's trying to get money into the economy and getting people financed where there's no financing and you're having no revenue, so you're burning through a ridiculous amount of cash when you're obviously specifically or notably, if you're a startup, obviously, and you're trying to get revenues. If you don't sell, you're going to be in a very complicated scenario where winter has come in terms of funding, and everyone is obviously aware of that, and your burn rate just goes through the roof because basically you have no revenues. It's a very tough spot to be in, and you need to continue to deploy on R&D, and you can't make your ends meet. It's going to be complicated for a lot of people. But the two topics that I would say are more pressing, and I feel all the entrepreneurs getting back to me on this, is the layoffs and the labor, the stimulus on labor, and the stimulus package, the financial package. So I think those two are the crucial bits. And then, this is right now, Jose. I think in the future, what we will see clearly is more litigation and more restructuring and insolvency naturally, which is potentially what's coming ahead. I would just like to add one thing, which is on a positive note, because I'm an optimistic by heart, so I do like to keep things positive. I'm not as sure as I was at like 2 weeks ago that this was going to be a swift V curve, in the sense that we were going to drop sharply and then we were going to get back, because obviously there would be a boom in the economy after that. Even if we didn't get to the same level, I'm not as confident right now. But what I do know is everyone on the market is talking about secondary opportunities and having private equity investors with a lot of cash that they still have and they need to deploy, in getting lower valuations and getting money and getting basically targets at a discount. And I think that is going to prove there's going to be a lot of M&A activity and a lot of consolidation in the market, and let's see who comes out of this stronger, and on what strategies. But I do think the last number I saw was that the private equity funds in Europe were holding on to, I think it was 550 billion in dry powder. So if the market goes down, if the valuations go down, if money basically buys more, then the private equity will be there for the taking.
Yeah, completely agree with you. We are hearing more and more investors that the fund is the same from a month ago. They have the same money, but now they tell startups that the ecosystem is changing, so the valuation must change, and like it is what it is, and it's really interesting to see all of that in real time. So now, Miguel, I'm going to ask you something more tricky. We all know that you have a close connection to Google, to YouTube. So I want to know from you directly, to our listeners, some statistics of, like, tell us what industries are growing. Tell us what people are watching on YouTube. Give us some statistics to work with, because there are a lot of industries right now, emerging industries. And you have that data. I don't know if you can share that data, but your microphone is, you need to, no? Yeah.
Hello?
It is, yeah.
Thing that we have been discussing this past few days, a report that we developed in-house, where we tried to understand what was happening with the video consumption online. And so basically we went out and we compared the traffic that we were getting from January and February, and then the month of March, where we really felt the coronavirus issue coming stronger into the ecosystem. And so we tried to basically understand what were the main categories that were being affected by this effect. So we looked at Facebook, at Instagram, and at YouTube, obviously, and we tried to compare the effect of the coronavirus on these three platforms. And we see that the growth on online video consumption has skyrocketed in March as compared to the first 2 months of the year, which was obviously expected and a natural conclusion because people are more at home. We also noticed that the consumption of media sources as opposed to entertainment sources was higher. Okay, so which is also a natural response because people are looking for information and are looking for information from trusted sources, and there's a lot to say about that, especially when you're talking about Facebook and sometimes, but Facebook mostly.
Yeah.
And also we noticed an increase on topics like workouts, fitness, how to stay in shape at home. So all these sorts of content has also had a massive increase in March, and we are seeing that line continuing to go up. So this is not a surprise, but it's more of a confirmation that what we anticipated. We also understand that, especially on the YouTube front, we understand that there is a big effort on the part of the platform to keep people informed and to get the information from the right sources.
Yep.
So if, for instance,
your video
sometimes
sometimes fail.
It's freezing. I'm sorry. I
like right now.
Pause position with the router and everything, but
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So on YouTube, you have and you go to a video that is it on now?
Yeah, it is. It's failing
Okay.
more and more,
Okay.
but yeah, let's continue.
Okay, let's hope we can get through this. Okay, so what I was saying, if you go on YouTube and you look at a video that is somehow connected, either on the title or the description or on the meta tags, or even on the reading that YouTube made from that video, and it's somehow connected to the coronavirus issue, you will see immediately, automatically, a banner directing you to the World Health Organization website, which is basically a way of YouTube to say,
nice. I didn't know that.
This is the reliable source that you need to look at. No matter what channel you're looking that on, you will get that banner under your video that will direct you to the World Health Organization website. So this is an and I don't see that yet on Facebook or on Instagram. This concern that although I am providing you information on video, I also want you to get the right information from the right source. And nowadays, when we are sitting in our homes and we are connected to the world via our laptops or our telephones, and we have WhatsApp and Messenger and Zoom and Skype and all these abundance of tools, and we have all these groups and all these communities that keep sending us, look, I hear that this is right now is the malaria drug that is working, or right now I know that you should wear a mask, or now you don't wear a mask. So where do you get all the right information? and from what we have seen on the platforms, I have to say that YouTube has been doing a huge effort in trying to, because there is a lot of people that are producing their content on YouTube, and they to get some sensationalism or some more viewership, they try to pump up their rhetoric on video. They try to pump up their titles, and YouTube is keeping it down by several different ways. For instance, one of the channels that we manage, we produce it ourselves, is a channel that does videos related to soccer, to football.
Yeah.
And it's drawn by hand. So and last week we did the 11 team of players that were at the time reported to be infected with coronavirus. And immediately the video, when it went live, was not demonetized, but put it on a limited monetization layer, so to speak.
That means the video is not going to earn that much money, just for the viewers to understand.
As it could, and we had to ask for a manual review, which YouTube also did, and because it was a video that was perfectly harmless and was not in any way misleading the audience about the issue of the coronavirus, then it was reinstated full monetization. Miguel. But any video that covers this topic goes through this process, and YouTube only allows videos to be monetized where they are providing correct and accurate information on that. So this is some of the things that we see on the platform and on the user behavior of the platforms that are useful and should be, I think, implemented across the board on all platforms.
Let me just ask a question now to Luís regarding. I'm going to use some of the words because there is a question now that is currently getting reliable content on digital space. It's more about self-consciousness and belief in transparency, or about community control in real time. So here's the thing. I want to ask Luís one thing. That is because we eventually are going to touch in the fake news subject, and we all need to collaborate, and there needs to be a lot of innovation in these topics. So I want to ask you something. When you speak with clients, with startups, with big businesses, more and more they go consume content online, and they get their own assumptions. How many times do you have to deal with fake information, with information that that is not true, but people use sources that are just not reliable? So how do you deal with that in your day-to-day life?
So how can I don't know how to express the amount of times that happens to me on a daily basis. But to be fair, I don't know whether it's that different from what happened in the past. Explaining what I want to say with this. I think the problem with fake news is that there's a fake news, obviously, that a lot of people believe in. Whereas back in the days where we didn't have the proliferation of media and communications sources that we have today, when you had a fake news, you had the dissemination of a fake news was very limited. Whereas today, that is not accurate. I remember that when we started working when we built Team Genesis, there were a lot of what we called urban myths at the time, that X, Y, or Z were not feasible and were not possible to be done. Like, it wasn't possible to do stock options in Portugal. It wasn't possible to do convertible notes. It wasn't possible to do a lot of things, just because I would assume some lawyers said it would be too complicated, so he said it can't be done. But to be fair, and that proliferated, and then it became an urban myth. Well, what I want to say by this is that we as lawyers we are always very cautious about the sources. And the reason for that is because obviously we have to work with the law, and we know where to search. And we know that instead of the World Health Organization, we know where actually the source of our information lies. So we always go to the source. That is our MO, our modus operandi. So to your question, how much does that happen? A ridiculous amount. For instance, it happened to me a lot of times during the last month about the funding of the 200M matching fund, where a lot of people thought that X, Y, or Z was possible, and it was not possible because they had a chat on over coffee with another entrepreneur. There's people saying, people hear the information, then they process it, and then they convey what they've processed, and then it just becomes a snowball effect. The problem with fake news is not that they're very different from what they were years ago. It's the speed at which they disseminate, and them becoming, well, actual truthful news, if you will, just because so many people is saying that. And as we say in Portugal, or in Portuguese, a lie told 1,000 times becomes true.
Yeah.
And that is the problem with fake news. It's it spreads like wildfire, and because the entire world is saying so, it just becomes true. But I'm not dealing with it more than I used to deal in the past.
I think also one of the reasons for this is that usually when, and especially for the more acceptable conspiracy theories, are usually sent to us by someone that you trust, by one of your contacts, one of your friends, who probably didn't do the information that is passing on, and just send it over because, okay, this makes sense, let me share this with this group of people. And one of the things that I sometimes I lash about on groups where I'm at is that if people lose 2 minutes and do a simple or 2 simple Google searches, they will know that that is not true. And people are lazy and they don't do that. And so then you get that snowball effect, because it's someone that you trust. Why would he send me something that it's not true? I know him. He doesn't tell a lie. So it's true. And then you assume it as being true, and then you don't fact check it. And when you don't do that, you become a part of the problem. Even unwillingly, you become a part of the problem.
Can I just interject to say, and this is me blaming myself, I thought, and I'm not sure whether it's fake news or not, but I do think it is, the house party thing that happened with the house party app that everyone was saying was a scam, and people were being hacked out their Netflix account and all of that. I was the first to send that across to my WhatsApp family group. And to be fair, I still don't know whether it's fake news or not. So boo-hoo on me, because obviously I did that. But I thought that I tried to prioritize my parents being on house party and potentially not being able to deal with the scam as quickly as I would. So I'm to blame for a portion of fake news in
but it's a natural behavior. I think we it's something that we know. House party is the thing these days, because kids are using it, parents are using it, so a lot of people are using it. And then you put out something like, okay, they're selling your data to Facebook, and then watch out, it's a scam. And then all of a sudden, so I don't know if it's true or not yet, but I went to read about it. Who is behind it, and it seems to me that they're pretty much legit companies. So they're probably they're using your data, because if it's free, then, as you know how the saying goes, you are the product. So they're probably using that data for themselves, but it's not a scam. It's not the Russians or the Chinese or whoever, no pun intended, obviously.
It's always the Russians, remember that.
Who are doing that. So but it's a very valid example. Also, I had a couple of weeks ago a conversation with my mother because of a similar issue. She shared on the family group a video, and I did a couple of searches, and obviously that wasn't true. And I called her and I said, look, that's not true, and you don't do that. At least you fact check it, because she received it from someone else who is also on the same demographic. So it's not true. And what I told her is, you do a couple of searches on Google and you get out, you ask one of us and we'll tell you. And on the next day, she called me back and said, hey, I already got the true statement. And this was a clip that someone was doing to show how people could be deceived. And so someone edited out the parts where the context was, and then was just saying this preposterous thing.
And so, just to complement what you were saying, there are a lot of news, a lot of fake news that are being, like, how can I say, being shared by older people that don't have the same skills that we, the youngest, have. I'm going to say this because all of those audios of medical experts telling us what to do with the COVID that was shared in all the groups, and all of the tips like holding your breath by 10 seconds is completely bullshit. All of that stuff that is being shared, like it's fast sharing, and I was discussing this with one of my friends. And he was saying, well, at least makes people afraid, at least makes people into shock, at least people are now afraid of this. And if they don't understand in any other way, this is working, okay? And I was like, yeah, but it's not true. So it's a lie, and let people hold their breaths. It's not harming them in any way, and they feel more comfortable and afraid. And I was like, yeah, but if he has coronavirus and he holds his breath for 10 seconds and he thinks that he has not, that can cause a lot of problems. And by saying this, now I want to ask you the balance between freedom of speech, and I'm going to work with Mafalda Freitas' opinion, freedom of speech versus avoiding fake news. When does your voice should stop, if it ever should stop? How can we filter these? Do you think that we're going to go into a time where, like, who decides who is fake or not, and about our freedom of speech in terms of fake news? Do you think that there should be a barrier there? Do you think that should be a spot where if people are misleading other people with fake information, do you think that there should be any regulations here? I know this is a hot topic, but I want to hear your opinion here.
Can I just say one thing? Older generations sharing over WhatsApp or whatever platform without thinking much about it is exactly the same thing as an email chain about the Prince of Nigeria that wants to offer you $1 million and X. It's exactly the same thing. The problem is not new. I saw a meme or a GIF like the other day saying the Prince of Nigeria with a lot of gold in front of him and never had a return email, and so he never got to distribute his gold. But having said that, I think there is, Jose. I think your freedom of speech needs to have boundaries. And regardless of how we perceive it, in a more liberal or more contingent way of analyzing it, if you are blatantly trying to harm someone, as the house party one was a very good, like, they even have a bounty on whoever started this, apparently. If this is done with an intent to harm, then surely you're overstepping on your freedom of speech. Surely. Now, the really complicated question is, as Miguel was saying, whether we have a moral obligation or a lawful obligation to fact check before we actually forward and share what we do not know whether it's fake news or not. And that is a completely different question and a very complicated one to know the boundaries.
Yes, because it would be very hard to know if you fact checked it or not before forwarding, especially on encrypted apps that we use like Telegram or WhatsApp, where information flows and no one knows what's in it. So it's a very interesting question. I agree with you. There are boundaries to what I can say, because if it's demonstrably not true and I know it, then I need to be responsible for what I'm saying. And if I'm hurting people, then obviously I'm liable for that. So I don't think that's so. So yes, we need to.
Yeah, I don't want to be too technical, but then the question comes exactly a question of evidence, in the sense that you need to understand. You're doing it obviously via encrypted platforms, and obviously the question then becomes, who caused the harm? Was the first person that shared it? Because you fact check at the time. Then it branches out, and it's a bit of a dilution of blame, if you will, across the entire chain, which is very complicated to deal from a legal perspective. But again, I don't want to get into more details of this, but it's very complicated. very complex, if you will.
Yeah, I agree that, because even if you, like the earlier example where someone edited out a clip out of context and then shared it, maybe they were within a conversation where that made sense and he was proving a point on that conversation. When that also is taken out of context, so it's twice taken out of context, and then you have a problem. And who's it's a very valid discussion, and I'm thankful at these times that I'm not a lawyer or so.
So I want to ask you now still regarding this topic, a different question. Well, looking at this platform, like, let's look a little bit to influencers and the people that influences entire masses, millions of followers. And I'm going to ask this question to Miguel. How do you see like that influence being used? So tell me the impact that you think that they had on this pandemic, on every single scandal that you have, because everybody has an opinion, and we have seen on Instagram a lot of all you guys, you know, and you work with a lot of influencers, you know, almost every influencer in Portugal. So there are a lot of misinformation there, people saying blatantly lies on their platform. Because you eventually work with them, how do you deal with that in your day-to-day life? Do you call them?
Well, sometimes I have to, yes. Sometimes I have to, because sometimes what they do affects us directly in our own activity. I give you an example. We work with creators, and we are a bridge between creators and brands who work with them to also reach their audiences. Okay, and everything that a creator, I can give you an example. A creator is on a campaign that is a 6-month long campaign, has 3 or 4 communication outreaches, and in the middle.
Can you repeat the last?
That is
can you repeat the last 10 seconds?
Okay, so we have a talent who is on a campaign that goes over 6 months, and he has 3 or 4 communication points that he needs to address on that period.
Yeah.
And at the same time, parallel to that, and having nothing to do with the campaign, he does something that is preposterous, and which causes the brand to say, I don't want to be represented by this person anymore. So then you have a problem, and it's a legal jeopardy for me as well, because I assume the responsibility before the brand that he would behave, so to speak. Okay, so yes, sometimes we need to call them and say, you need to remove that post immediately, or you need, or you're going to face the consequences, and we are going to face the consequences, and again, you will have a problem in your hands. So yes, I have had to make some of those calls in the past. They're not easy calls, because then again they go back to, okay, but what about my freedom of speech? Okay, what I also say, and quoting from the great Marvel rule book, with great power comes great responsibility. And basically that's a rule of thumb that you need to take into this equation always. If I have 400 or 500 people following me on Instagram, and I haven't posted in 1 year, my impact is limited to that circle. Okay, if I have 500,000 people following me on Instagram, which probably of those 100,000 will be impacted by what I'm saying directly and immediately almost, then I need to take more care of what I'm saying.
So, yeah. So basically, Luís, now I want to ask you a tricky question. We are now going.
I knew there was going to be a tricky one. I knew by your face there was going to be a tricky one.
So, looking at these young generations that are consuming all of their content online, like nowadays, like the future founders, I guess now we are on like the millennials and all people that was born between 1988 and until 1995, let's call it like that, okay? But people of the 2000s are doing 20 years old, and eventually they will go to creating startups, and we are dealing with some of these founders that are leaving the university and creating startups, and I bet that you know some of them already. Do they engage in a different way? Because they get they're a lot more connected. They follow influencers, and we know that because the statistics say it. So how do you think that this is going to impact the future in terms of the startup ecosystem, if you want to call it that way? I think because there will be an impact. The information will spread differently, and because the sources of information are just different. Tell me your perspective here.
So first and foremost, a disclaimer. My wife is a millennial, so I sometimes struggle with that. I think the first point that I would like to make is I think the millennials are way more immediate in the sense that they need immediate gratification or responsiveness and responses when compared to other generations. And I think that goes to everything, to your response timing, to you having a stimuli when you're doing something and you want instant gratification, that stems from gamification, that obviously comes from the online consumption.
Definitely.
And I think that is fundamentally the quintessential change is everything becoming immediate in the stimuli that you're facing daily. That has implications throughout your life. That is what I think changes when your consumption is online and on demand constantly. Now, in what this is in general terms, in what relates to the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, and the influencers picking up on what should be done in terms of whatever is the pain point of a startup, or whatever is the common issues that we're all facing. I think we need to get to a mature state of the market, in the sense that we are not yet seeing, and we were discussing a bit offline before the podcast, and I think you're absolutely right, Jose. I think that the point that you are making about having more influencers in this space is absolutely critical. But I think for you to do that, you need to have entrepreneurs that do not need to work. What do I mean by that? I need, and obviously that I'm saying this in a jokey way, but our ecosystem has not had the exits that allow you to be an influencer about these kinds of things, because you can build your fan base based on what you've done before. So you've exited a company, you've turned VCs, you've done something along those lines. In Portugal, that is not abundant, and that is obviously, to use a euphemism, that we don't have that many cases. But I would think, and I would argue, that if and when that happens, and a lot of good things will come from that. But we're still not there, I say. And if we are, I haven't seen them, so I think their reach is not that far-reaching, because I should have known about them.
Definitely, and let me just give you an example. That I just received a notification on LinkedIn of Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know how to say it, how to pronounce it right, but and he's an influencer. He's definitely an influencer. He has millions and millions of people that follow him. And I was on the live stream, and he's now taking coffee every morning with his fans, and people engage in how can I say this? It's like a tsunami of comments going boom, everybody giving a comment, everybody wanting to engage, and that's and we are talking about the LinkedIn live stream. It's not YouTube. We're talking about LinkedIn, and it's really fun to see into the perspective of that's how you, because you are on LinkedIn, okay? That your curriculum is there. We are talking about a more mature that are on the market people will still go there and behave like, because the millennials are creating. And they are used to this, because they started this when they were young on YouTube and on Twitch and all of these platforms. Now we're seeing the switch between one to another. We're seeing this, like, I think Miguel can elaborate a little bit here. Miguel.
Yeah, it's actually really very interesting because before LinkedIn started pumping up their social strategy, so to speak, and trying to boost video on their platform and really give it a space there. But I would say around a couple of years ago, LinkedIn would encourage you to write articles. Now they're encouraging you to do video. Okay, what's interesting, for instance, one of the reasons that we take music, for instance, on YouTube. Music, you have Justin Bieber, which is a world global phenomena, who was actually born on YouTube and is who he is today because of YouTube. And what we see with his fan base is that they interact massively on everything that he does, on Instagram, on YouTube, on everywhere. So they keep commenting, liking, sharing like crazy on everything that he does. When we go to a different demographic band, for instance, I don't know, Michael Jackson or The Cure, or I don't know, whoever, Prince, and you take one artist like that, and you go to the social interactions that they have on YouTube or social platforms, and there are incomparably fewer, and because of that, their organic reach on the platforms are usually very frustrating. I have had conversation with some Portuguese artists who have 20, 30 years in their careers, who are successful artists and who are struggling to find a space on YouTube, are struggling to find a space on Instagram, because what they say is that this is not for my fan base. And right now, LinkedIn is showing us all that it is possible. So it's very interesting what is happening. We see a lot of interaction from demographics that aren't usually engaged on other platforms. And LinkedIn is really showing the world, I think, or teaching a lesson on how to bring engagement onto the platform. So what I think the reasons for this are,
It fell. Your video fell again.
the
Can you
value
repeat the
of the
last 10
content.
seconds?
So
Your
yeah,
video is still failing a
so
little bit. So
okay, so what I was saying is that LinkedIn is showing us that it is possible to work with older demographics and still get engagement. And what I think the reason for that is on the content, or on the value of the content that you are doing. So when you are doing video on LinkedIn, you may not have the millions of likes and the tens of thousands.
You think, and let me just follow up with that question. You think that there is like a place or a world where startups will start doing live streams and on LinkedIn to share their ideas, to share their promos?
Not only that world exists, we are living on it. The problem is that the startups need to catch that train also. So they need to stop looking at YouTube and Instagram to surface. If you're trying to reach a specific demographic, and if you're trying to reach a specific audience that is on the professional side, you definitely need to be on LinkedIn. Absolutely, yeah.
And Luís, how do you see this adaptation to LinkedIn? Because like you and your company uses LinkedIn a lot. Do you think that you are, for example, you have a lot of connections, you know everybody on LinkedIn? Do you think that your voice no because this is impactful? Do you think that your voice on LinkedIn, if you go and do a blatantly offensive comment on LinkedIn, like use it like like you use Twitter, how reachable is your? Do you think about this when you do something on LinkedIn? Do you?
I think about this when I'm talking right now. So obviously, this is the annoying thing about being a lawyer. You're never unrestrained. But to be fair, I'm going to say something that I think you'll understand and empathize with. I am not completely free in what I say publicly. That is beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'm okay with that because I live off the trade-offs of that. I need to understand if I'm benefiting from something, I need to have whatever bad comes from that, and I need to own it. I own the good, I need to own the bad. That is something that is very clear to me, and probably because I'm a lawyer and because we've studied this. The one that has the benefit of anything must have the prejudice or the downside of that same thing. The good comes with the bad, and vice versa. So whenever I have the network that I have on LinkedIn that I've built over the years and that has served me very, very well, I cannot say things without thinking about them. And I cannot write things without having a very clear understanding of what the perception will be and the impact of it, and also the ripple effect. And if it goes viral for some reason I cannot control. So I do think we need to use LinkedIn very carefully. I think we need to use any given social media or platform very carefully. And I do remember some of my colleagues, not from Morais, but from other firms, that have been shut down, if you will, just because of inappropriate comments that obviously looked very bad on their firms because they've said X, Y, or Z. And at the end, apparently, their firm was representing the person that they were naming and shaming. So you need to be careful with what you say. It doesn't mean that you're not opinionative, that you can't have an opinion, that you cannot have strong views about things, which I do, I would say, way more often than I should. But to be fair, you cannot have the good without the bad. That cannot be a reasonable and sustainable way of living, if you will.
Yeah. And let me just read this comment. Stealing Video just said semiotics. Hashtag semiotics. Francisco Ribeiro wrote, I think a lot of what you are saying goes back to the demographics. Millennials are 23 to 38 nowadays. They aren't high school students anymore, rather a huge chunk of the workforce. And this is a reality. The way, and like, I am a millennial, of course. I don't know if you can tell. And one of the things that, and Luis is also a millennial. One of the things that, and I think Miguel is also a millennial, not sure. He's still categorized into a millennial. So one of the things that I see nowadays, the way that we behave, because information, and this is finish this topic about this live stream, just accept it. The funny things about this generation and the way that I see other people behave. Now, a lot of the opinions, and I work with Eduardo, and usually said, if it's an opinion against an opinion, I will trust my opinion because it's mine. So we should introduce facts, and more we are seeing people using facts into argument. It can be fake facts, okay?
Or made up
facts. But going a little bit back into the conversation, I want to know about, like, again, I want to touch this question. Do you think that there is, like, companies should work with these guys, try to make sure that the way that they communicate improves, and try to teach this workforce, these millennials that work into companies? And I think teaching, it's really hard to say that companies will teach people how to speak. Of course, this is not what I'm saying by any means. But, having this kind of, how can I say, kind of workshops, inside workshops, where they can, like, emphasize what people have best and try to improve other skills, always having in mind that we should fact check everything. Do you think that this is possible? Like, going to I'm not trying to explain an utopian world here, but a world where everybody, like, when they give a fact, they will say the source. Like teachers use it to tell us on school, just write the source below where you take that image or the text. I think that this should be in our conversation. Luis, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can. I think what Miguel was saying is, I think that nowadays you can ingrain the members of society with certain behaviors that you didn't think were acceptable or even doable 10 years or 15 years ago. So I think from the whole pandemic issue, I don't know whether we're gonna be so Southern European in the sense of saying hi to people from COVID onwards. So that will change abruptly, I would think, and I would believe. I remember my father telling a story about this Nordic person that went to a meeting with him, and he wanted to shake his hand, and the Nordic went to him, and the Nordic man said, "I don't know why you want to spell germs on my hand." This was like 20 or 25 years ago. He was quite kind of quirky, but to be fair, I don't know whether that is not going to happen in the foreseeable future. But what is my point with what I'm saying? I'm saying that what Miguel was saying, trying to in a sweet way lecture his mom about what the process should be in order to relay information onto others, and that you have added responsibility because of that, will be something that the entire society will learn to do. And if you are able to frown upon people that do that, and that share information without fact checking, then clearly society will see that as a bad thing, as an ominous thing, and you will start acting accordingly.
Yeah, Luis, but let me just ask. Okay, I'm going to put the question into different ways. When you have a lead with the business, when you are presenting a pitch, it's a really good example. When a startup is presenting a pitch, you are presenting values, or when you are presenting a report, we see more and more like millennials, and this is statistically, like I'll speak about my example. When I had the first startup, that I just pick up the values. I'm like, okay, let me put an average here that facilitates my point of view. So the way that we stand, we are all laughing here because we all do it in some sense.
I don't. But I don't think.
I was expecting it. Don't you think that this is going to be more and more, and people will be more and more like, no, this is my data, I know my data, I can share you, but trust me. Don't you think that this is going to be, because I'm feeling this already. A lot of sources are like, I did a study, we just accepted the way that they did it, or some startup presents something, we just accept the way that it is. Investors on the other side, I'm hearing more and more about metrics, because it's really hard to like make a metric lie, but it is possible, because the assumptions that you get from the metrics can be also lies. It's called a fallacy for some reason. So how do you see, like, just following up with these arguments and with all of this that I just said, about your opinion here, this checking, because this is going more and more. The old ones, they are a lot more conservative, but the younger ones, they're like, okay, just because I'm working with a lot of startups that usually say, okay, just I'm going to put these values because they look right. They're not completely true, but I'll put them.
I think they're just about.
Yeah, just about right. So, and I think you are laughing because you deal with this every day. And I want to hear your opinion
here. Mine or Luis or both?
Both opinions. Can be both opinions. Of course, Luis, because Luis works with startups, it's really funny to know the way that he's going to answer this, because I really want to know his opinion here.
No, and you're laughing harder, Luis, so you go ahead.
So I think I do have this this kind of game that I do, that I bring someone from my team to a meeting when we are meeting startups, and everyone says that they're the next rock star, and obviously you have to believe that to an extent, obviously, in order to be successful, because you have to. I'm not saying fake it till you make it. I'm not a fan of that at all, because it's going to be in a professional world. It's going to eventually. It's gonna caught up with. You're gonna be caught. I think that's the point. It depends on who you're pitching. To be fair, I couldn't care less if you're pitching me wrong numbers or not, because I'm not worried about that. I think the watermark test for me is to see how entrepreneurs deal with things out of their comfort zone, and they're outside of their comfort zone. Legal is the most outside of their comfort zone that they can be. So if they're okay in dealing with the legal issues, I will be very comfortable. That's my metric, my KPI. but that's qualitative. It's not quantitative. So I'm fairly good at assessing that. Now, the point that you're making is that I'm a mentor and a jury in quite a few things where a few, let's say, pitching competitions, and I always drill down. I always drill down on the numbers. Always. I remember I had this impact company that told me that their addressable market was 2 billion. And there was no way in hell the addressable market would be 2 billion. That, like, there's no, not even if our population would grow to 2 trillion, that would make sense. It wouldn't. Like, there was such a niche thing. And I asked the person that was pitching, like, what's that source? Where is that coming from? And obviously it came from nowhere. 2 billion seemed like a fair addressable market. That's not a good way of doing it. And if you're gonna pitch and come up with numbers and basically test the Excel file to see whether that works or not, it's gonna look bad on you if you don't have a source. And professional investors will understand that. If you just think it's fair to say that in a pitch, and you're trying to basically have an investor invest in you that cannot discern whether a metric is not true, do you really want that investor?
Well, if you are saying if your metric is not true in the beginning, I really don't. I really don't.
Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe that's exactly the ones you need.
Well, that's exactly the point.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
And now going back with this communication, I'm going to pick the same question here. I'm going to ask you, on YouTube with your creators, you know exactly what to say to push the people and to keep people engaged. You know, the way that they start their videos, they end their videos, the way that they present marketing stuff, advertising, and so on. Do you think that they are just being experts in a way that they cannot control it anymore? Like, they are just treating like an opinion. They are becoming so experts in the communication with their fan base that when they can do harm in more discreetly.
It's an interesting question. Well,
your microphone failed a little bit.
The thing with YouTube is that, okay. Hopefully I'm back. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing with YouTube is that if you're a vlogger, or if you're sharing day-to-day conversations on video with your audience, or if you're sharing the latest jokes that you found on online, or you're doing something, but you're not in character. So if you're a vlogger, or if you're someone who is directly speaking to your audience, or you're teaching them how to make up or whatever, or doing your workout at home, whatever. So you assume a posture where you are truthful, and this is who you are. When in fact, this is not exactly 100% who you are. So it's a reality suit that you put your audience. And one of the rules of thumb on YouTube is be authentic, be yourself. What we understand is that if either by fearing that people don't like them as much if they are themselves, most creators are actually in character when they are on video, and they're not exactly 100% the same when you get to know them personally, which is fine. It's not that they're lying to their audience. It's not that they are misleading in any way, but you do get that the person that you see on a video is not exactly 100% the person that you eventually end up meeting in person when they're not in character. For instance, if they do a meetup and they have their fans come over and greet them and do selfies and whatnot, then they are in character. So the same people, that the person that you have on video have live. But if you grow a personal relationship, then you start learning that there's a difference, and it's okay, and it's not bad that happens. It's just a way of them to protecting themselves and protecting their integrity.
Let me just follow up on that and asking you, because of that skill, and that's a huge skill. Like when a founder goes into a stage and he starts pitching, he also addresses some kind of
obviously
faster.
He goes into character.
So let me just ask you, because we're talking about collaboration here, and when are they becoming entrepreneurs? Because they are one small step. They already have the audience and they have the skills to pitch. So eventually all of these YouTubers from 60, 80, 23, and we already have some with 25, there's these millions of fans, eventually will become huge entrepreneurs because they have the two things, that is scale. They can scale their business really fast, and they have the skills to pitch. So.
Yeah, but what I say to you is that they are already entrepreneurs. The day they uploaded their first video, they became entrepreneurs. Okay, either they're building a business on a YouTube channel, or they're rolling out or expanding their activity into merchandising or online games or whatever. So they are entrepreneurs in heart when they upload their first video. If they'll succeed or not, it's, I think, also I don't know the data, but probably a very similar equation as to entrepreneurs who succeed or don't succeed. So if you are successful as a YouTuber or as a content creator, it's probably the same ratio that entrepreneurs when they're. So because basically it's the same type of personality and of qualities that you need. You need to solve problems that no one has told you how to solve. You need to look for the answers that no one has given you. You need to start doing things that you haven't been prepared for and haven't studied for. And this is, in essence, what an entrepreneur is. When I started my professional career and I started working, I had no idea what a spreadsheet was, and I never took a course on Excel or numbers or whatever. But I can write up some formulas. I'm not an expert on that, but I can solve my problems with Excel. Up to a point, obviously, and right now I'm facing currently a to roll out, either to take a course and learn how to do things on a different scale, or pass it on to someone who will help me on that. So this is, but basically, these type of characteristics are across the board from entrepreneurs, content creators who are successful on YouTube, because I have literally thousands of people that opened up their YouTube channels, but they don't have the quality, so they will never stand out on the crowd. It's the same with entrepreneurs. You have, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of students who are on their final years in university, and they have the last cool drink in the desert. So, but of those, only a small percentage will succeed. So I think that's the same. YouTubers or content creators on or social media influencers are, if successful, they have the same characteristics as they are as successful entrepreneurs, I think.
And Luís, let me ask you this,
or at least some of the same. Probably not. Well, we could dive into that, but I'll leave it at that.
Luís, tell me, how many startups are you seeing right now that uses influencer marketing as a strategy, or influencers overall, to reach their potential market? Or if you ever worked with an influencer starting a startup. So I want to hear your take here.
Yeah. I did work with influencers starting startups. Aside from those particular points, I don't think many are reaching out to influencers. And I think the reason for that, Zen, and you've built and you worked on a business to consumer social media model. and you know that it's quite capital intensive, and there's a reason why in Portugal typically startups are more successful in the business to business models as opposed to business to consumer, or business to consumer, if you will. Like some facet of the model is for consumers at the end of the tunnel. Typically that's more complicated in Portugal, and we don't have that many. The pool is not very large, I would say. So to your question, or to your point, have I seen a lot of startups reaching out to influencers or having influencers as founders and then leveraging that in order to get further? Not that much. Not that much.
And about
you do that. I've seen you do that, but
yeah.
But I think it wasn't a leading question, I think.
No, and like you have some huge cases, like people we already talked, Luis, about, and Miguel, we all know people here. It's a huge example. They would start working with influencer marketing, and now they are huge. They just reached more than 3 million users today, and they have more than 62% of retention. That's something that you couldn't get. Like, nobody believed that a new social media will just pop up in Spain. That just doesn't happen, and it's really funny to see it happening. So, just to wrap up everything, I'm going to ask you two final questions, one to each other. Miguel, my final question is go.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to the data and your data sources and everything. And I heard an interesting quote a few days ago that if you torture the data enough, they will tell you what you want. Okay, so it's just something that you keep in the back of your head. So if you have an idea and you really want the data to show you that, it'll eventually, you'll get there. Important. We take that into account, or I take that into account when I'm looking at the analytics or the data on a given channel, and I have my own preconceived ideas, and I try to take them out and look at the data only. Because if I go into that and saying, okay, but this guy's audience or this girl's audience is X, Y, and Z, then I will find confirmation of that on the data. So it's the same when you're a startup entrepreneur, you're trying to build your case, and you're using data. Eventually, if you want to get to a point, you will crunch the numbers enough that they will tell you what you want to hear, which is not probably the good way to go on that front. So
can I just say that even if you did not do any training in spreadsheets, you've learned the most essential bits.
Yeah, that's the first thing that we actually tell startups. Forget everything that you think about your business and start looking for answers in data, and start asking people that will use your product and so on. So the final question will be what you have learned, or what's your biggest lesson in these strange times that we live. And the second question, this is for both of you, and the second question is, how can we innovate in terms of communication in our business? How can like startups be more engaging in terms of communication to each other? And because we have an awesome example, that is Tech for COVID. They are being really showing that they all came together. They now have a big Instagram position, and they did it all. They did it, and now they have a voice, because having a voice is important. And the startup community doesn't have particularly a voice. Well, eventually, BetaE will catch up and will be like the voice, of course. And we already kind of are. Yeah, everything ends up on BetaE eventually. And just by following up this question so two things. The first one, your biggest lesson in the last couple of weeks since the COVID started. Second one is about the future, the communication, the startup ecosystem with YouTube. How can all of this collaborate to create? I don't know who wants to go first. Luis, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I was just jotting down what you just said. So I think the biggest lesson that we can take from this entire situation, that's a very good point. I don't want to go all existential on this and saying we need to take a step back and think about life generally. But I do think it's not who I am generally to think about this in that regard. But I do think this will have a very powerful and enduring impact on our society. I think, at least for me, the biggest lesson is that and I do not have children. I need to point that out. I do not have children, so that's why I'm able to make this claim that I'm going to do now. I am more efficient at home than I am at the office. Again, without children, because I've seen a lot of people on the other side of the screen just having kids up and down them and asking for attention, and that's not easy. I know, but as I stand, I think the biggest lesson was we've jumpstart adoption in remote work and remoteness in like 3 or 4 years. I think that has made a big impact on and even before we were locked down, that improved my life significantly, and I think it will continue to do so, and it will allow us to have some family time in an easier fashion. The second point, and you mentioned Tech for COVID. We're one of the initial founders at Team Genesis for the Tech for COVID. We're basically the coordinator for the legal issue is Pedro Cruz Gonçalves, who is one of the coordinators of Team Genesis with me. And I actually have to do stuff for Tech for COVID after this call, which is problematic, but I think I have a good excuse. But having said that, I think the biggest thing that you just said is particularly impressive. Tech for COVID had it basically grew like wildfire, and I think the tech community in Portugal will never be the same in the sense that we'll stop having silos as we had, and even the beginning of Tech for COVID was in the Porto scene, and then it branched out to the Braga scene, and then it branched out to the Lisbon scene. But it took a while in a small country as Portugal to get to a nationwide movement. So I'm going to tell you a story where I was mentoring in an accelerator, and one of the teams at the accelerator program said, but the problem is that Israeli startups and the Israeli ecosystem, they all help one another. And I said, that's brilliant. And they all partner with one another, the big corporate with the startups, and the collaboration is immense, blah, blah, blah. And at some point, I just thought, like, I asked the question, like, this program started how long ago? And they said 2 months. I said, have you talked to any of the contestants and participants to know whether you could collaborate with them? And they said no. And I asked the same question to every single startup on the cohort, and none of them had reached out to any of the other participants. So the point that I would like to make is that we clearly have to talk more to one another, because stuff like, and I think the one of the biggest accelerators of the Tech for COVID movement was Felipe Avila, Felipe from InfoSpeak. He was the one also partnering with other tourism startups in order to form a consortium that they're doing business together. I think he's a bit of a leading light in the sense that he sees collaboration everywhere, and I think BetaI has a place in that as well. And going to your bit, all roads lead to BetaI, and that is actually something that happens in the Portuguese ecosystem, and I'm very happy for that to happen, because I don't know whether you know this or not, but we were the ones that helped incorporate BetaI like 9 years ago. So that was very nice, and it's very nice to see the growth of BetaI. But the collaboration within the ecosystem needs to be heightened considerably, because everyone stands to gain with that. And with that, I shut up.
Thank you so much. That's actually amazing, everything that you just said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those are very interesting points, Luís, and thank you for that. And the main takeaway that I've registered so far is that we know very little. We are sure of a lot of things, but a lot of things are not what we think they are. And this has proven that in a matter of days, literally days, the world can stop and no one by any measure would have ever anticipated that this could happen. So my main takeaway is that we granted is very limited and very thin in terms of consistency. So because other lessons, I think that we are just starting on this road. This will take much longer than we all initially thought. This is more serious than we all initially thought, and we are now starting to see how long it will take for us to get back to where we were, if at all, or if it's possible in the short time frame. So with this, it has been wonderful and really amazing to see movements arise organically on social media, with social media, around social media, where people come together and they clap their hands at one given time, or they come out to the windows and they wave their flags, or they come and they sing together as it's going on in Italy, it's going on in Porto, in the north, it's going on so many different places. So it's amazing how we as a species can come together in a situation like this. And it also brings out sometimes the worst of people in ways that everywhere you'll see people who are trying to take advantage of this situation somehow, and are trying to profiteer of this situation somehow, and are trying to use it somehow in their benefit. It's not that there are not opportunities in a crisis. It's usually where you can find sometimes the biggest opportunities. For our business is linked to the industry in a way, and a very significant part of our business is linked to that. And so the advertising business as a category is actually taking a hit with this. What we need to do is look at it and see where are the opportunities for us. And it's not wrong to do that. What it's wrong is using that to mislead others and to make a profit on that. So this crisis, what I've learned is that it's bringing out the best in people, and also bringing out the worst. And sometimes in the same people, you can see the best and the worst, as the examples a few days ago with people trying to go to the beach and traffic jams to get there, or people outside when the government is asking people not to be outside. And those are the same people who are at night clapping and singing and doing whatever they're doing to there and fighting this together. So I think that this is the biggest takeout that I've learned so far, is that the human species is really remarkable. It takes something like this to bring us to learn what we can do together, and seeing movements that are coming together, like Tech for COVID and other movements on other different areas are very important. And in the end, what I think is that the ones that will come out stronger are the ones that collaborated more, are the ones that were open more to different ways of thinking, are the ones who were listening to the data and not to the false theories, and not to the conspiracy theories. And those are the ones who are going to come out on top after this crisis, because it will end. We will go through it. I have no doubt. We are a very resourceful species, so we will get through it. Yes, but the ones that will come out on top I think are the best of us.
So, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, first of all, from my guests, Miguel and Luís. Thank you so much for being here for this hour and a half, approximately. Thank you so much for everybody that stick with that. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and share this video if you like it. And also, we put content every day on our platform. We're going to release new shows. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe again, and thank you so much to Luís and Miguel for being
Very
here.
good on that call to action. Very good.
And share their opinions and what's going on in their businesses. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank
and
you.
we
Thank you
see
for having
you
me.
next week.
Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.